saying thank you so much for agreeing to chat to us today and how excited we are about being able to head along and see Much Ado About Nothing. So congratulations on your role and how excited are you about it?
Yeah, thank you. Incredibly excited. It's an amazing play, and Benedict is an incredible character. He's got a bunch of wonderful insults, and Shakespearean insults are some of the best. And he's a very, very funny guy. So it's an absolute pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about how you became involved with this production. Did you audition for the production? Were you approached to be part of it? How did you become involved with it in the first place?
The Australian Shakespeare Company is Australia's largest independent theatre company. I've done a lot of work with the ASC in the past. So I did a production of Twelfth Night many years ago, and I've worked a lot in their education or theatre and education programs. So that's how the relationship started. Glenn called me a few months ago. I'm actually based in Sydney, but he offered me the role, and it was too good to pass up. So we've known each other for maybe about 6 or 7 years. I also do Wind in the Willows up in Sydney, which is another ASC show. And this summer decided to do something a little bit different. So I came down to Melbourne. I'm from Melbourne. I have family here that I get to stay with. So that's sort of how it happened. It's very lucky for me.
You mentioned that you've done a few jobs now with the Australian Shakespeare Company. Well, tell us a little bit about what you love about Shakespeare.
Oh, what do I love about Shakespeare? They really are some of the best stories that exist. It's a bit befuddling how a lot of people argue, how could one person have created such a wealth of incredible stories? It's sort of hard to wrap your head around, because he was a philosopher. In many ways, he was a spiritualist, and he really had the drop, or had key insights on human nature. And I don't think there's really necessarily any contemporary writer who can show human behavior better. I mean, Benedict and Beatrice in this show, it's a classic story of, they start the show and they hate each other. They know each other from the past, and they've been friends, or they've got mutual friends. They're part of an extended friendship group, and everyone sees them just try to rip each other to shreds. And eventually someone goes, hey, you know what? I reckon those guys actually fancy each other. And our trajectory is from haters to lovers. And I think even something as sort of comic or simple as that, I think everyone's had friends. Everyone's had some friends that have kind of followed that trajectory.
Yep.
Little things like in this play, we talked about how, the title is Much Ado About Nothing, but there's potentially a translation or an older version of the title, which was Much Ado About Noting.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this play which is people overhearing stuff, or gossip, people overhearing things, and made up stories that propel them into motion or propel them into action. And I think that says a lot about human behavior as well. We're really motivated by what other people think, what other people say, almost, and I think that's sort of what's being demonstrated in this story, almost more than our own sort of inner wants and desires. So I think there's a lot to be gleaned in every Shakespeare about human nature and human action.
And this production's also very different to what people will have seen before, because there's a little bit of an infusion of rock and pop music in there as well. Tell us a little bit about what makes this production different to perhaps other productions of Much Ado About Nothing that our audience has seen in the past.
Absolutely. People are probably used to Much Ado About Nothing being quite a straight play with a lot of comedy and a lot of laughs. This is the Much Ado text, the Much Ado play within a rock concert. So we have a beautiful stage in the Botanic Gardens, and there's a lot of music. The characters are the classic characters that you might see at a rock concert, from the rock stars themselves to the roadies, the ridiculous roadies, and all the hangers-on and the people in between. So it's really got that classic rock and roll concert vibe or aesthetic. We have a lot of really amazing songs. We have some live musicians, and there's that sort of live musical vibe. Very much, yeah, it's a rock and roll concert as much as it is a theatre show.
Yeah, and that's funny because that attracts a different audience, because I found that when I told my wife we were going to see this show, I love Shakespeare. I've loved Shakespeare ever since I first started to read it at high school. But for my poor wife, she sees Shakespeare as a jail sentence that she was given at high school. As soon as I mentioned, though, that there was rock music in this production, she was like, "Oh, I am interested." So do you think that will actually change the people that come to see this as well, that it will open up Shakespeare to a whole new audience?
Yeah, ideally that's it. We have kind of spoken in the cast about whether there are the people who want a rock concert who are going to turn up and all of a sudden they get a bunch of Shakespeare and they'll hate it, or there's going to be the people who turn up expecting a straight Shakespeare and get all this music and they're going to dislike it. But I think if you can see yourself enjoying a little bit of both, it'll be the perfect show for you. And also, our job is to make these stories really understandable and the comedy really relevant for our audience today. So all of our work in rehearsal and everything we do in constructing the show is about making sure the story is really, really clear for everyone who comes. Yeah. We do it for the audience. It's all about you. So we try to give you the clearest story that you can follow with the best emphasis on the right syllables, and you basically get to follow the story really, really clearly, and hopefully, if it's that clear, the comedy will come out and the enjoyment of the amazing storyline.
Yeah, and with that change with the way the story is told, what does that mean for you as an actor with the way that you approach the character? Because, of course, the character of Benedict has been around for hundreds of years, but this is kind of a fresh new take on that character. How do you approach that as an actor?
Oh, look, I was born a rock star, David. I don't have to really act any of this. No, look, we have a lot of music training. We're doing as much singing and music training as we possibly can. This Benedict he's a bit of a Lothario. He's a bit of a cheeky fella. He's not quite as sardonic or maybe quite as dry as some other versions of Benedict have been. And sure, I guess the actor's job, even if it's a big role that lots of amazing actors have had a crack at and done incredibly well at, your job is to make it your own and try to find the version of it that sits well with you. So I guess it's just about kind of digging deep and looking for your inner Lothario rock star and doing your best to sort of bring that out on the stage.
Definitely. And you mentioned before about working with Glenn as director. Tell us a little bit about what Glenn is like as a director and what he brings to the show as well.
Glenn Elston is a beautiful man. He's incredibly respectful of the actor's process. So we have some actors in this show who have worked with Glenn for decades, and they bring so much mastery to how they develop and how they construct their characters and how they deliver comedic moments. Glenn is a wonderful actor-director, so he's incredibly supportive of your impulses and the little ideas you have, and we follow those through to their final conclusion. So I really love that. Look, between you and me and the rest of Melbourne, I don't usually like directors all that much. They kind of say, you don't get into acting if you hate attention. You also don't get into directing if you hate having control over absolutely everything. So it's lovely to have a director who is empowering, I guess, and lets you follow your impulses and see where they're going to lead. And I think that's maybe where some of the real magic can lie, because it makes it fresh and it makes it your own, or if you're following your own impulses for each of the characters, you get to find a really unique version, which is just for this production, and I think that makes it much more special.
Definitely. Now, for all of our listeners out there, Much Ado About Nothing is on at the Southern Cross lawn in the Royal Botanic Gardens until the 4th of February. And if you want to grab tickets, you can grab tickets either via Ticketmaster or www.shakespeareaustralia.com.au, the website. You can also grab tickets on the night 1 hour before showtime, but you may be going on a night that's already sold out. So I'd recommend getting tickets before you go, and like I said, you can get them through Ticketmaster or through shakespeareaustralia.com.au. Nick, I guess to wrap up, what would you like to say to people out there who are thinking about grabbing a ticket to come along and seeing this amazing show?
I would say make sure you bring a bottle of wine. I'd say come if you like, if you have a partner or yourself, if you like Friends, if you like any sort of rom-com, if you like any sitcom style. This is Shakespeare's sitcom. It's really approachable. It's really easy to understand. It's light and it's really, really fun. If you have any friends that you guess are probably in love, bring them so you can kind of model some of those latent amorous desires on stage to them and sort of suggest that they might change their behavior. And then come and have fun, laugh with us. We have had a number of wonderful audiences and a bunch of really, really great shows. So come and have fun. We look forward to having you.
Definitely. And again, for all the listeners out there, if you want to grab tickets to Much Ado About Nothing, it's on until the 4th of February at the Royal Botanic Gardens, and you can grab those tickets from Ticketmaster or shakespeareaustralia.com.au.